How you doing, Isaac?
Good. How are you, Mayor?
I'm good, Baruch Hashem. Thank the good Lord. So, welcome to the Two Tall Jews show. We are the Two Tall Jews, or we are a set of tall Jews.
TWO, not TOO.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And today is June 28th, 2020, and we are ready to rumble. So this show is where we go a little deeper into some of the topics that we just touch on the Instagram page called On This Day in Jewish History. If this is the first you're hearing of the Instagram page, make sure to check it out. Not if you're driving. Stop the car, side of the road.
Yep.
On Instagram, On This Day in Jewish History, 1H. Hit follow, hit like, get back on the road, and keep listening to the podcast.
Yeah. And that goes for all forms of transportation.
Right.
You know, get off at the next stop.
Biking.
Go to your next lap in the pool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't care if your phone is waterproof.
Yeah, absolutely. No, give us a follow. We'd really appreciate it. And you get to see all the great stories and content that we're posting on a daily basis.
So the point of this show, real quick, is to go deeper. We want to make you laugh. We want to make you cry. We want to make you think. We want to make you question. And we want you to get to know us because our page has grown a lot in 1 month. A lot, I mean, like normal, a lot. And, this is going to be a place where, we expect like a back and forth. We for sure want to do some call-ins at one point, right?
Absolutely. We welcome your questions and we welcome your conversation when we get there.
Sure. We're going to do some live on Instagram once this gets going a little bit. And yeah, so today we're going to talk about our the post that we did today. And that was Mel Brooks. Happy birthday, Mel Brooks. Woo!
Yeah, so today Mel Brooks is 94 years old. Mel Brooks is for those of you who are not familiar with him, he's a famous director, writer, comedian, entertainer of the post-war period. He's had a career that spanned over 7 decades, and he continues to work, which is remarkable in and of itself. Him, just as a side note, Carl Reiner, and what's the third guy's name? Oh, and Norman Lear. That's like this magnificent trio of old Jews all approaching their mid-90s who have made their names as Jewish American comedians, American Jewish comedians. Anyway, so back to Mel Brooks. Mel Brooks is famous for a whole host of films and comedy sketches. You might have seen The Producers.
Young Frankenstein.
Yeah, Young Frankenstein.
Spaceballs.
Yeah, Spaceballs, absolutely. And perhaps the most famous comedy sketch he did with his buddy Carl Reiner, The 2,000-Year-Old Man, which some people say is the funniest piece of art that America's ever produced. I don't believe that, but it has been said by legitimate critics of comedy. Mel Brooks was also a World War II veteran who was deployed to Europe as the Allies honed in on the Nazis, and he stayed in Germany following the end of armed battle to entertain the troops and Germans that had been held against their will during the war. He's entertained abroad on and off for the past 7 years as well. He was married to the critically acclaimed actress Anne Bancroft, who was famous for her role as Mrs. Robinson in the film The Graduate, starring Dustin Hoffman. He's lived this incredible life. So happy birthday to him.
Okay, so like what else can we add to Mel Brooks that people didn't get from reading the post, What would you say? Like something maybe like a commentary on Jewish humor. You know, we had like a small conversation about that. Like what is Jewish humor? Is Mel Brooks the definition of Jewish humor, or is it more like Larry David, Woody Allen, pre-cancellation, or I don't know, Jerry Seinfeld? Who is the individual that would you say personifies what Jewish humor is? Him?
As far as a contemporary comedian, I would probably say Larry David.
Right. Yeah, because I feel like Brooks is more like a lot of gags, a lot of like
a lot of gags, a lot of sort
musicals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in a way, as far as comedians being relevant over a long stretch of time, Mel Brooks probably doesn't pass the test in the way other comedians do. I mean, they pass the test as being a legend, so they're always sort of legends are always they never cease to be relevant in that regard. But as far as now and of the past sort of 20 or 30 years, I would definitely say the current personifier of Jewish humor would be Larry David. And I think one of the really hilarious things for anyone who knows anything about Larry David is how off the show, independent of Curb, you know, he is nothing like the Larry David of Curb Your Enthusiasm, which I think is very funny.
How do you know that?
Through interviews, both.
You interviewed him?
No, I've read interviews. So there was
on the show. Tell me on the show. What's going on?
There was a recent interview with Larry David when the U.S. entered quarantine. So it was a phone interview, and he just talks about how he hates conflict. He hates fighting. His daughter was bickering, and he said, "Why are you complaining? You're living in this beautiful home. You know, you have everything you could possibly need." And it drives him insane. So this idea of someone who in his personal life wants to avoid all types of conflict has personified Jewish humor by being this master complainer, and added that to his professional persona.
Master complainer.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's cool.
Yeah. I think he gave a character to the
yeah.
That's a noise that Jews have been making for millennia, and then Larry David's like, okay, I can make a career out of that noise.
Yeah. More so than Seinfeld.
I think more so than Larry David ever thought he would. I think he only became successful after 40. Like.
Yeah, and I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
He's still.
Perhaps it's. I don't know what it says that we're saying more about Larry David than we are about Mel Brooks on his birthday. But the last thing I will say about Larry David is.
I think Mel would be okay with it.
Okay, I think his mom wanted his goal for Larry was to be a mailman. That was like her dream, for Larry to be a mailman.
Wow.
And so, yeah.
So random. Well, his birthday's coming up, so.
Yeah, absolutely. We can speak more to him.
How dirty is my shirt, man? I keep. Okay. We're good. All right. Cool. So happy birthday, Mel.
Yeah.
So what has been happening? We got news through the wazoo, man, when it comes to Jews in the diaspora outside of Israel. So some of the pressing stories and headlines, we'll start with the more serious things, and I think we'll kick this off with the conversation about annexation. We're recording this on Sunday, June 28th, and allegedly on July 1st, the Israeli government said that they would be annexing parts of the West Bank, unknown which parts exactly, and it's caused sort of an uproar in the woke community. The Arab nations that, oh, by the way, we're on board for the Trump plan, but now when Israel's activating a version of it, they're saying that it's going to lead to catastrophic results. So just a couple things. And then also, I don't know if you missed it, but today Hamas came out with a declaration of war video that looked it was a great video. Like, from a production standpoint, they've got some people working their butts off to make sick content. of like soldiers in the trees, snipers, and fucking they're trying to like take out whatever. It's well, maybe we'll clip it, or probably not. But the point is, it's a big debate.
I have sort of a question, Mayor, and
Yeah.
question can also be for our listeners who might also be equally uninformed on annexation and its history in the region.
Sure.
So when we're talking about annexation, we're talking about the West Bank, right? Judea and Samaria.
Right, but we're like we don't know exactly. Let me see. What is? Yes, they're talking about taking parts of it, like 30% of it.
But like whatever amount of land, the land will come from what we are calling the West Bank.
Correct.
Okay. And the West Bank is divided into 3 regions, right? Area A, B, and C.
Right.
Got it. And there's one area that's entirely under Palestinian control, and there's one area that's there's sort of shared security control, and the other area is entirely under Israeli control.
Right. Which means that there's an area that's technically already annexed. But the thing with annexation, it's like the Golan Heights, for example. Everyone living in the Golan Heights became an Israeli citizen when they annexed it in the 80s. So let's see what NPR is saying, because they're super biased, super not biased. Yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be parts. It's supposed to be 30%. I don't know what 30% of the land means exactly. And I mean,
well, let me ask you this. So regardless of what is annexed, do you believe personally that, independent of whether or not Israel has the right to do something that they're clearly about to do, do you think those people should become citizens, those who are not citizens living in those regions already, and they should, be sort of entirely assimilate as much as possible into Israel proper?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what makes sense in the long run, because it would actually be a benefit if they can, act as regular citizens and not necessarily, create a fuss. I mean, they're already calling for a day of rage, and the Palestinian Authority is already saying that they're not going to abide by their Oslo agreements, which means that the part that they control, it's like they're giving up the small sovereignty that they have. It doesn't make any sense. So it just seems like there's a lot of chaos, and like I wish it could just be like, okay, now you guys are all citizens. Here's your citizenship test, and now it's like learn Hebrew. It's like you these are like unrealistic like things that we're asking, and I mean, there's always a debate of like, okay, let them be citizens, don't have a 2-law state that applies to Jews and that applies to Arab Palestinians who are Muslim and Christian. But then eventually you're going to lose the Jewish character because the population numbers aren't going to fit. But if you don't do that, then you're not a democracy. So it's like, do you think that we can find a balance? Let's say because the Palestinians clearly don't want their own state. I mean, I haven't seen any indication that they actually want their own state next to Israel. I haven't.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what you just brought up, I think you brought up a lot of different things right there.
Yeah. No, but specifically talking about, like, let's say it's a one-state reality. How does that work? Does it work?
I think it only works if you grant the people living in those areas who are now officially part of Israel proper full citizenship.
Right.
And I think one of the things that Israel has done so well at achieving is maintaining the status quo.
Right.
I mean, if the status quo is working for anyone,
here's the thing though, like Sharia law exists in Israel. I don't know if this is like news to you or to maybe some of our listeners, but there are individual cities inside Israel that are Arab Muslim dominant, and they conduct their local civil laws through Sharia. The general state laws for things like marriage and food and the Saturday, right, the Shabbat, those things are all under the rabbinate. But there seems to be an exception for the 22% Muslim / Christian population that don't get married through a rabbi, right? Or divorced, that don't care about kosher. They have different laws. They have halal. So these are like little things that, maybe at one point we're gonna probably be like, okay, the Jews aren't the majority anymore, but we figured out a compromise, and like that compromise lies in, and this is just, I'm like thinking about it now, that lies in like local politics that function within a country that's a Jewish by nature. Certain things are still controlled by, religious Jewish approach, the halacha. But then for the more Arab dominant areas, like let's say we take the whole bank. Let's say Israel takes the entire West Bank. And now Ramallah and all these cities, now they're under Israel. They're all citizens of Israel. Populations are almost exactly the amount, right? But local affairs are conducted not by Jewish law. I don't know. I mean, Israel would, like the religious right would never be okay with that. So at the end of the day, we're risking a civil war within the Jews. So I don't know, man.
I mean, I think that
Savior.
Deborah Glick, she's a Jerusalem Post columnist, and I think her most recent book still is The One-State Solution. And she's been advocating for annexation of the West Bank, for a decade.
So what's her argument?
Well, her argument that it was never the Palestinians to begin with. One of the interesting elements of her argument is that a lot of people will say, okay, if you annex the West Bank and these Palestinians are now become Israeli citizens, Israel will eventually lose its Jewish majority and it will seek to be a Jewish democracy. She puts forth this research that essentially argues the opposite, that Israel will be able to maintain its Jewish democracy even after this annexation process. I don't really fully understand that, but when you get into the rhetoric of, well, if you annex, then you have to give them rights, and therefore that's going to prevent Israel from being, a quote-unquote Jewish state, because it's then going to be more of a democracy than it is a Jewish state. What are you saying of the current situation? I mean, is the status quo a democracy?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying
that.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it is. And it goes back to, when it all started, and the fact that, a thing like a lot of Palestinians are descendants from places like Jordan, Syria, Egypt, and those countries have disregarded them as past citizens, especially Jordan. Majority of look at the Jordanian flag.
Yeah.
And like, where are they in this? Where are they in helping solve the refugee problem?
Right. Or the seven countries at the border. I mean,
it's unrealistic that refugees are going to be brought back to where their great grandparents lived, and that's because of regional warfare waged by those countries. So that's why it's important to understand the history and understand why we are where we are today. Israel's definitely made some mistakes. I think they were very excited after 67 when they, we just did all the posts about the 6-Day War and how magnificently massive the land that they acquired was, and how exciting it was to say, like, number one, we have Jerusalem unified. We can go to the Western Wall. We can go to places like Nablus or Shechem, as it's historically called, where Joseph is buried, or just throughout Yehuda and Shomron. That's the West Bank. That we are called Jews because we're from Yehuda, and it's like
And let's I think it's also worth pointing out that Arabs, after the United States, have the highest standard of living in the state of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And so this notion of a Jewish state that doesn't also, this weekend, right? I mean, this weekend is, around the country is gay pride, right?
Right. And that's not to say that there isn't, Arab.
Of course, gay marriage is not legal in Israel, but good luck being gay in Gaza and living. I don't,
You gay in Gaza? Good luck.
No offense to our listeners that are gay living in Gaza.
I think our Gaza listenership just dropped dramatically. Yeah. Hey man, that's our second Gaza shout out, dude. They got some content coming out.
Yeah.
Some sick vids.
Let's see what else is going on in our world and in yours. Well, the death of Yisrael Friedman, a great rabbi, a great Brooklyn rabbi, a great Jewish thinker. We lost to COVID-19 back in April. He died. And for the listeners tuning in, what's the English translation of that?
That is, may his memory be of blessing.
Yeah, I mean, from the New York Times obit, he seemed really inspirational. He devoted his life to Jewish learning, and I feel like we channel those very concepts here at OTD.
OTDJH.
Right, OTDJH.
Yeah, so there's a quote that I really liked from the obituary that said he would read texts 100 times and then think about them. He would see things in a way that most of us didn't perceive, and you'd see his face, he'd stroke his beard, and he'd be in the zone. And, coming from a background with relatively modern Orthodox rabbis throughout my whole life, teaching me, and the stroking of the beard. I mean, I've been doing it throughout this whole podcast, and just ever since I got this long beard, the stroking of the beard really, I resonate with that image that was painted of him, because I know what it's like to be in that zone. And I'm sure his zone was 10 times higher than my zone has ever been. So may his soul receive a blessing in the next world.
Today we also mourn the passing of Milton Glaser. Mm-hmm. Milton Glaser was the creator of the Isle of New York logo, along with countless other logos and pieces of art. Another one that he's known for, and this was a photo of which was included in his New York Times, which appeared in today's Times, is the one of Bob Dylan, where sort of all the different colors sort of being blended from his head. It's a famous I don't want to say cartoon, but artistic depiction of Dylan. So two people whose lives didn't intersect in a physical level, but definitely both two New York people, two New Yorkers that we remember as we continue our efforts on this podcast.
Two fun facts about Milton Glaser. He did the I Love New York logo completely for free. He gave it to New York, and they probably really profited off that. And along with Clay Felker in 1968, they teamed up to create the New Yorker magazine. Oh, sorry, the New York magazine. Not New Yorker.
So, and that brings us to, what does that bring us to?
Francesco Arturo.
Oh, yes. Okay. I've been thinking about this all day, and
got this.
So, yeah.
Let's go.
I'm just going to jump in. So, Francesco Arturo is an Italian composer and pianist.
Italiano.
And conductor. And for the past 30 years, he has been collecting sheet music that was written by both Jewish and non-Jewish prisoners in the Nazi concentration and death camps. And the vast majority of this music, as I said, was written in these places, but the music itself was never played. At least most of it wasn't. Lotoro's archive, which has amassed over 8,000 pieces of music, and he got these pieces from trips he made around the world, whether it be to museums or whether it be to the homes of survivors or the homes of the musicians' descendants and the relationships that he cultivated with them. And the story that was issued in the New York Times earlier this week focuses on the sort of citadel or musical oasis that since 2014, Lotoro has been working on as a way of wanting to bring these pieces in the lives of those that created them to life. So I'm just going to read this short paragraph, say a couple more things, then we can talk about it. The city, which I haven't mentioned, Barletta, a city in southeastern Italy by the Adriatic Sea, where Lotoro was born and has lived for 55 years, it is home to 95,000 people. And the city donated the 2-acre site of an abandoned brandy distillery where this institute is going to be built. The Italian government has provided $5 million in funds, and Mr. Lotoro said he was hopeful of receiving as much as $36 million more from the government by the end of the year. This would leave him with a gap of several $1 million to close through fundraising. So this is incredible. Obviously, Italy and the entire Italian community, including Mr. Lotoro, was hit hard by COVID, so that put a lot of these efforts on pause. Just to wrap things up with respect to Mr. Lotoro, one of the things that motivated him to get involved and sort of put a lot of his money and direct all his time and energy to a project of this magnitude was this idea of music that exists, that it hasn't been played. A lot of these pieces have yet to be finished, continues to be imprisoned until it is played. And only once the music is played is the music finally set free. I think that's really, really powerful.
You can also make the argument that this music, it represented something terrible, that it represented awful memories. What if a Holocaust survivor hears it and gets PTSD? What if this music is meant to be not really, like, it's meant to stay, in the state that it was left in?
Yeah, I think that, I would, that's a point as well taken. I would disagree with that only because the music wasn't written to never be played. So people, the idea of, there's this one.
Did they make new music, or were they just doing songs that were known?
No, they were writing new music.
Wow.
This story, I think, encapsulates it all. This one Pole who was imprisoned at Theresienstadt wrote on toilet paper. He didn't have a pen or a pencil, so he wrote he used the medication that he was supposed to ingest in order to write out the sheet music on toilet paper that was later smuggled out. And so these stories that are just, you can't really wrap your mind around them when you hear them the first time. I think that is any indication more than anything else that this music was meant to be heard, and music as salvation.
Yeah, it's like, I've never read it. I've been meaning to read it, but Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, I've heard, it's like, it's the idea that it's the meaning that kept him alive, right? And the meaning of life and God and all these things that kept him going. And to an extent, this story that you spoke about, it's like the music, writing that song was what kept him alive, and
Right.
it didn't matter that he was using his medication, although it's weird because if that ends up killing him, then. But I hear the story. It's very special.
Yeah, and and there are stories of people, musicians, violinists, and people who played their instruments for SS officers, and that also saved them, because the Nazis loved music and they loved German music, and so the idea of being able, the idea of being saved by the ability to play your own instrument adds another element to what it meant to survive.
Right. I mean, also to just play, and they would play in the morning and at night, right, when they were going out to work, and like that must have been torture to just be playing music while you're watching your brothers and sisters,
There was a point at which they were playing, I can't remember what camp this was, and the smoke from the ovens was so strong that it sort of, a wave of the smoke went in front of the sheet music and blurred their ability to see the notes, and they had to wait for the wind to blow the smoke away so that they could continue to play.
Wow. Have you been, by the way?
I've only been to Dachau. I've not been to. The only place in Eastern Europe that I've been is Germany. I've not been to Poland.
Well, you gotta go. Maybe we'll do it on this day in Jewish history trip. Once we get some sponsors. Speaking of, here's our sponsor. This show is brought to you by Our Brains. Our Brains are sponsoring today's episode of On This Day in Jewish History because they love our product. Isaac, does your brain have anything to say about our product?
Yeah, I mean, my brain wakes up to text messages from Mayor every day. And if I ever want to, if there's ever a moment when I think I could, conceivably remove myself from the origin of this passion project.
Nope.
My partner in crime on this podcast, gets my head straight about it. So no.
And we're back. So, we're going to do a little segment we're calling Deep Dive.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to do a deep dive into a specific person, topic, event, anything, just a deep dive. I think it's self-explanatory. Today's deep dive is called Tikkun Olam. Its history, use, and why it's misunderstood. So, what does Tikkun Olam mean? Tikkun Olam means
repairing
the world, right? But it's like not a commandment, but it's like we are told that as Jews, we have our purpose here as the chosen nation is to bring a light onto other nations. We are to be a light that helps and repairs and and guides through practice, and it should be we should be role models for the rest of the world. And so I mean, I think personally, if I was to get started on this, I think that the word has definitely been hijacked.
Absolutely.
By Jewish organizations that are on the far left of the spectrum, because they'll say that it's pretty much the end all be all. It's all we're supposed to do. It's just focus on Tikkun Olam and nothing else. And I think when you do that, that's when you enter the region of like the social justice warriors. And I think at this point in the podcast, our listeners are going to understand where I'm coming from politically. But I consider myself a moderate, a centrist. Consider myself centrist, leaning right, but still moderate. I don't like any extremes. I'm just in general in life. Anybody that knows me will tell you, I seek balance. I try, I learn from Maimonides and Rambam, who Maimonides is Rambam. He teaches that, to live a fulfilled life and to develop a relationship with, the universe and the essence, God, whatever you want to call it. It's to be balanced. And when you take something like Tikkun Olam and you imbalance something like Tikkun Olam, and you almost turn it into an idol of sorts, where it's like, oh, we have to repair the world at all costs. Doesn't matter if I am, compromising everything else. Then we lose sight, and now we're not repairing anything. We're damaging, in my personal opinion. And that's my deep dive. And
yeah, I what do I want to say about that? Yeah, so the notion, this idea of the term Tikkun Olam being hijacked by, without labeling, because I feel like if I'm labeling, I have to explain what I mean by those labels. Hijacked by those that are not, by non-religious Jews.
right.
One of the reasons why it's problematic is because it goes against the very nature and the origins of Tikkun Olam. Tikkun Olam was not a concept which is from the Mishnah. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Mishnah is homoeletical commentary on the Torah. The origins of Tikkun Olam are embedded in the religion itself. So this idea of divorcing the practice and saying I'm only going, to donate to charities or Jewish organizations and repair the world that way is really sort of an oxymoron. It doesn't make any sense. Tikkun Olam comes through a Jew's dedication to the teachings of the Torah and to the Torah's commentary. And so this idea that it's been removed sort of in recent modern millennia is problematic. It's ahistorical. Obviously, if you want to give and the justification for your generosity is Tikkun Olam, then I'm not going to tell you that you did a bad thing as far as, your quest to repair the world and be a good person. But, it's a misunderstanding, it's a misreading of the term and its origins and just what it is as a practice.
Yeah, and I think it's important also to say that, like, there's nothing wrong. Like, let's say you're a Jew, you don't want to be observant, you don't want to be religious, maybe you're not sure if God exists.
Right.
You really resonate with the idea of Tikkun Olam. And we're not saying that, like, just because you're not observant, Isaac's not an observant guy, and it's coming for him. So you don't need to be observant in order to exercise Tikkun Olam. But the idea is that don't forget the essence of where it comes from. And it comes from rabbis who were observant, who were coming from a holistic level of, like, this is part of something, and we're taking this out of the Torah. And we're also talking about this maybe in the context of Pirkei Avot, where, it teaches very basic things that you would think are in a psychology textbook. Pirkei Avot is the only sect of Mishnah that doesn't actually deal with any laws. It's just talking about character. It's talking about your qualities as a human being and how to live a more fulfilled life through those qualities, such as, the famous phrase of, like, don't hang out with the wrong people, do more, say less. These are all things, there's if not now, when, right? Hillel very famous, and if not, right? Well, what was the exact quote? I'm gonna look it up right now. And that one, by the way, completely hijacked by groups like If Not Now. And just a note about those groups: If Not Now, B'Tselem, Jewish Voice for Peace. We completely disavow. There is very little Jewish in Jewish Voice for Peace. They have different agendas. They pretend. They hold up the Jewish flag, and they forget about the more than 6 million Jews that live in Israel. When they say Tikkun Olam, they don't talk about Tikkun Olam in Israel. So there's heavy double standards there that that are sort of the core of this conversation between me and Isaac and I. He said, "If I am not for myself, who is for me? when I am for myself, what am I? And if not now, when? I think this is you can talk about everything that is Tikkun Olam comes from this phrase when approached from a balanced perspective, when approached in the context of understanding where it comes from, who's saying it, why is he saying it. I think if Hillel was alive today and he saw the way that, if not now, the organization was using his quote, he would have a heart attack. And it's just important, if you're a listener and maybe you're just starting to get involved with, Judaism online, and it's important to be able to differentiate between organizations that virtue signal their Judaism, that are token Jews, the as a Jews. Don't trust everything you see on the internet, of course. That's the general rule of thumb. But, take some of these organizations with a grain of salt. Even take the organizations that I might agree with a grain of salt. Take everything with a grain of salt. But they'll make it very obvious.
It's important not to put all of your eggs in one basket with regards to organizations or the missions of organizations that you value. And yeah.
Okay. So we are going to do, this is the first time we're doing this new segment alert. That's the new segment alert. Maybe I'll put something in post, maybe not, or maybe just, that's the new segment alert. We have on my end, sorry, I didn't even introduce the segment. The segment is called Bubbies Delight. On this segment, we are going to bring in something that Bubbe made. Maybe she didn't make it right now, but Bubbe could make it. The idea is it's going to be a Jewish food, a Jewish delicacy. We're going to taste it. We're going to review it live. These are, on my end, I got the Kedem tea biscuits, delicious vanilla flavor. They look like this, very classic. You probably see them at every Shabbat home for dessert. It's parv, beautiful. Parv means that I can have it after I eat meat. So it says special tea on it, and here we go. We're gonna do 1 out of 10, like the Barstool Pizza reviews. One bite only. Everyone knows the rules. Nice crunch, nice sweet flavor. Definitely a Bubby delight. Gets stuck in the teeth a little, but it's delicious. These are very addicting. I'll give it an 8.5. What do you got?
All right, so I have two things. So the one thing I have with me, and the other one is just a famous recipe.
No recipe. What do you? Come on. No time for that. Get to that next time.
One of the places I got is Russ and Daughters, and Russ and Daughters is a very famous Jewish place to get smoked fish. They have great dried fruits, and
just a lot of people going, eh.
Yeah, and you can't beat the licorice.
Wow.
I'm gonna.
Right.
Yeah, it's fresh. It's incredible. It's really, you gotta try it.
There's nothing Jewish about it. It's great.
It's great.
All right, let's go.
Oh, it's a really good satiating consistency. I mean, I got these over a week ago, and they still taste as good as new.
Wait, wait a second. Speak and then take another one, because I think I was talking and I want to see you eating it.
Wait, you want me to eat again? Incredible. Really amazing.
It's amazing. All right, 1 out of 10.
Give it a 7. 7. It's pretty good.
Pretty good. Okay, cool. So, I guess this episode was brought to you by Our Brains and Kedem Tea Biscuit, Russ and Daughters.
Yes. And next week it'll be brought to you by my Bubbies Kishka.
Okay, looking forward. Yeah. We got to leave him something.
Yeah.
Can't give him everything.
Yeah, no, of course.
I think actually Kedem, little history about Kedem. Ooh, you weren't expecting this, were you? Founded in 1948 in Israel, but now they work out of Bayonne, New Jersey. And I think Israel too, but
Yeah, Bayonne, New Jersey. It's a good place.
yeah. The next episode is going to be just Larry David voice. So that wraps it up. Thank you for tuning in to the Two Tall Jews show, brought to you by Two Tall Jews, me and Isaac and I. This is a podcast of the On This Day in Jewish History Instagram channel. Again, if you didn't follow it yet and you are no longer driving or operating any sort of machinery, vehicle, thing that moves really fast, make sure you follow us on Instagram. Make sure you hit subscribe and you hit the notification on YouTube. And if you're listening to us on any of the podcast apps, make sure you hit subscribe and please leave us a review. We really, really, really appreciate it. See you next time.
See you next week. Take care.
Take care.